Yeah.
All right, if I may call the meeting to order, it is 7 o'clock. I just need a mover and a seconder to call the meeting to order. Moved by Councillor. You're moving?
Yeah, sure, it's on here already.
No,
No.
Oh, okay, maybe not yours, mine already.
Oh, there we go. And seconded by Councillor Manson. So now therefore be it resolved that the meeting be called to order at 7 PM. And that the procedural bylaw be suspended for the duration of this meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
And on to item 2, which is the approval of the agenda. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that?
Oh,
Yes.
just want to add 8.1.9, the bylaw to appoint Ray Al as the Oakwood treasurer.
Oh, it's not 7.1.9, 8.9.
1.9.
Okay. So could I get a mover and a seconder, please?
I'll move it.
Second. All right. Now, just now therefore be it resolved that the agenda be adopted as presented with the addition of item 8.1.9, a bylaw to appoint Riel Forget as CAO clerk treasurer. All those in favor?
Aye.
Just before we continue on, a couple of little housekeeping notes, if I may. We were talking today about who moves and who seconds, and a lot of times the mover and the seconder of a motion is predetermined, which it shouldn't be. And a lot of times people are asked if they will move or second a motion. What I would like to do, just as our procedure here, is that if you were in favor of a motion and you strongly support that motion, then by all means jump in and move the motion and second it. If, however, you're sort of on the fence and not really that in favor and you want to hear the discussion before you make a decision, then let somebody else move the motion. And the reason I say that is because we can get into a situation in the future where somebody's looking back over the minutes and they see that somebody moved a motion and actually that person didn't even vote for it in the end. They didn't even like it. So if we can just to do that moving forward. So that motion was carried. We move on to any written disclosures of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest. Does anyone have any?
None.
Okay, so we're going to go on to the approval of the previous meeting summary minutes. So can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Manson is moved and Councillor or
Not more than.
Did you say that?
that was a joke based. Councillor Morton is seconded. What resolution, Richard? So this is the approval of the previous meeting summaries.
April 11th and April 14th.
Yeah, yes, good. So any discussion on those summaries? Yes, no, no discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Now we're going to go on to do we not have oh, it's further on the other minutes. Yes, they've been moved down.
Yeah. So 5.1, the dog pound agreement is next.
All right. Before we move on to that, just another quick housekeeping note. I just want to tell our audience that this is Donna Maitland's last term of clerking a meeting for the township. And that doesn't mean that she won't be here. Donna is going to be helping us out a lot, but Donna was hired to do 2 days worth of work, which turned into a week, which turned into a month, and
2 months, yeah.
2 months. And Donna will be continuing on, and we really appreciate everything you've done for us and getting everything organized. And helping us kind of make the next step forward. So
Yeah.
thank you very much. Of course, we'll be talking about it later in the meeting, but Riel will be clerking the meetings going forward as the new clerk. And I think I see a very promising future for Calvin Township with this leadership that you've brought us into and with the leadership from Riel going forward. So thank you both very much.
Thank you. I just want to say that I knew I was coming into a challenge, and those who know me professionally know that I love a challenge, and I'm not very easily intimidated or scared away. So it lived up to my full expectations and more. And I'm very happy to have contributed in such a positive way. And I'm super happy to have been involved in hiring of your CEO. And I have all the confidence in this council and in the CEO moving forward. So thank you for providing me with the most challenging and rewarding opportunity that I've had in a little bit. So
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. All right, so we're moving on to item 5. No, I have 5.3. I don't have the dog pound one.
oh, so the dog pound, the update there is that Bondfield also has a new CEO. So they're looking at the dog pound agreement. She's becoming more familiar with what that might have been. The understanding, and their clerk has looked into the past. We've not used that dog pound in a number of years. However, it's there. There was a part of that agreement that spoke to costs associated with heat, and so they're looking into that to find out more before we get that agreement to see what it looks like, what all of that meant, if there were ever any charges. But typically what it means is when, and we'll see a little bit later down, the North Bay District Humane Society is closed. When a staff member is picking up a stray dog, they need somewhere to bring it, not their home or not their neighbor's home. So the Bondfield dog pound was where that would have been brought, but it hasn't been used in a number of years. It's there in case you wanted to use it. So the agreement's not before us because their CEO is getting more familiar with it also.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So there is no motion for us
There's
tonight
no
on that. And can you speak also then, Donna, on the fire chief posting update?
Yeah, so that's been posted on our website, on a couple of the social media websites. Anybody who wanted to post it, I encourage you all to post it also. It's also been posted in the Matter Recorder. We'll see it in this week's edition, I believe. Yeah.
Okay. Any news?
The deadline is April 30th, and we did that purposely so that CEO coming in could work with fire department and others to make that hire. We have so far one applicant.
Right, great, thank you. So item 5.3 is the minutes that are the lost minutes. That's the missing minutes of council, and I'm sure you've all read this. Could I get a mover and a seconder for this resolution, please? Councillor Grant. And sure.
We should read it though.
Oh, I will, yes. So now therefore be it resolved, that the Council of the Municipality of Calvin instruct the CAO and or clerk to inform the municipality's legal counsel and the Ombudsman's office that minutes of the November the 25th, 2022 meetings of council, its second meeting of its term, were not prepared by Andrew Sprunt, and since attempts to contact him for a response to provide them have gone unanswered, that the record for this date's meeting will be incomplete. And as noted in the file by a previous clerk, the minutes for all and any closed meetings of the previous council held between February the 18th and June the 13th inclusively, and between June the 15th and November the 1st inclusively, are noted also to be missing from the record. I need a mover and a seconder. Sorry, I have that. I'm sorry. I need a vote on this. So all in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Moving on to item 7, which is the consent agenda. So this is just to accept the consent agenda. But before we go on and do that, we talked today as we're preparing the agenda that maybe we can change this name going forward and not call it the consent agenda, but call it information letters. And there is a policy in municipal politics to give everything a really complicated name that nobody understands. The example I use all the time is my wife was working at a nursing home and she would have to go for a 3-hour in-service. And I'd say, well, what's an in-service? And she'd say, well, it's a training session. And I said, well, why don't you call it a 3-hour training session? The consent agenda is essentially a group of information letters that are compiled before the meeting. And each counselor has the opportunity to read through these information letters. And if they feel it's something that should be acted on, they can ask at this point in time to bring that item forward into the agenda so that we can put a resolution together. There was one item taken from the consent agenda, which was the tax revenue item. And that's why it is not in the consent agenda, but in the resolutions that's coming forward. But what we're doing here is just approving the consent agenda that was presented in the agenda. So could I have a mover and a seconder for this, please?
I'll move it.
All right. So Councillor Latimer and Councillor Morton. So now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Calvin hereby receives the consent agenda items as circulated, less any requested for separate review and discussion. And they are the Polnon Police Board, bail reform impacts upon property damage, the District of Nipissing Social Service Administration Board, re-housing needs and supply and scope, and the Town of Perry Township Bill 112, Bill 5, sorry, 112, Bill 5. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, any discussion? No, no discussion. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
So the next item on the agenda is item 7.2.1. Which is further to that discussion earlier about us entering into a 3-year contract with the North Bay District Humane Society for providing animal services. Again, a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Morton and seconded by, I can second, by Councillor Grant. Any discussion on the Humane Society agreement?
Just one of those put one point in that I think that whatever we have the Humane Society, we had an earlier item for related to dogs. So I think whatever we do moving forward should be quite simple. Shouldn't, it's not an issue that's been an issue. In the last 5 years, I don't think we sent one dog to.
Last 3 anyway.
Last 3 anyway. All right, so just, you know, just I guess for, you know, staff from my perspective anyways, that, you know, this is a good agreement. That I would prefer to move forward on the agreement, but whatever services we provide there, they should be quite simple.
And I think I agree with you. I think we have to define the services that we're going to.
I think it's likely a discussion we'll have to have, and it's not, I don't believe it's of the utmost priority.
Mhm.
But
Any other discussion? Anyone else?
I was involved with the program when I first moved here 10 or 12 years ago, and I think we took 3 dogs there during the 2 or 3 years that I did that job.
Right.
And they've always been great, but their hours again are, you know,
Sure.
the dog did stay in my garage a couple of times.
And I'd just like to mention that in today's, if you looked at today's last month's job descriptions, no one is appointed to provide the service in any job description. And so if that is to be the case that you enter into this pound agreement, then you definitely need a staff member who's appointed to be the dog catcher after hours, during hours, and for the general public to know, only a staff person of the municipality can bring the dog to the pound. It can't be a citizen, and there's a fee of $100 if you should do that to the North Bay Humane Society. So those are all things to keep in mind moving forward if you pass this at some point in time.
The fee payable by the township or by
Yeah.
the, dog owner.
by the township, so it's something else to keep in mind as you're developing.
And
Who
use
is
that, I
doing it?
recommend that we defer it till we find out if we ever get a bylaw, or. It sounds like
Well-
we don't have one.
And you didn't have a bylaw officer before doing it, there was another member of staff doing it, however, no job descriptions in the last 5-6 months had this as part of their job description.
And we could defer this motion, but I think what we're doing with this motion is leaving the availability of the service open for us to then decide what program you're gonna put in place. And if we decide not to have a program, then you could.
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
There's no cost to the contract, it's a per use cost.
Right.
So I would personally support entering into it and just to give some options in case we are so unlucky that there might be an issue with a dog running on a busy road tomorrow or something. At least there's some sort of options for staff moving forward, and then we can have a further discussion on this when, when we have less priority,
Right.
more pressing issues, I believe,
Right.
with budget and things to deal with.
Any other comments? No? No? All right, so I'll call this to a vote now. Therefore be it resolved that the corporation of the municipality of Calvin enter into a 3-year service contract agreement with the North Winter District Humane Society for the provision of animal shelter services, and that the service contract agreement between both parties attached to this bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the corporate seal. All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. The next item is administrative matters, and the first matter has 3 sections to it, and this is the treasurer's report. It was a lengthy report, and I'm sure everyone had a chance to go through the report. Unfortunately, Leanne could not be with us tonight. So I'm going to go back to Donna. She had a chance to ask some questions and to get some answers on this report. I guess I should have it moved and seconded first. So this is just the treasurer report. Can I get a mover and a seconder to accept the treasurer's report? Moved by John Manson, Councillor Manson, and seconded by Mr. Morrison. All right, Donna, could you address some of the,
Do you want to do the next one, maybe the council remuneration?
well, do we want to just look at the general report first? Or that's actually the third motion.
Yeah,
isn't it?
that's, I mean, if you want, this first motion,
Okay, so this is just the motion to accept
right,
the treasurer's report. All right, so now therefore be it, well, any discussion on accepting the report? No.
I'm not of acceptance, no.
All right, so now therefore be it resolved that the Council of Corporation of the Municipality of Calvin hereby receive the financial report provided by the treasurer and approve the accounts payable circulated with the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
So we're going to go back and talk about the actual report in just a moment. So the second section is there are potential errors identified in council remuneration and expenses for the year 2022. And that's the next item up for discussion. So can I get a mover and seconder upon this? Moved by Councillor Morton and seconded by
I'll second.
Councillor Latimer. All right, so this particular item, if you've had a chance to go through the bylaw, and if I can just speak to it at first, I spoke to Leanne almost a month ago about this particular bylaw for the councillors' remuneration or pay. And it says that there's an amount given for the councillor, one for the mayor, and one for the deputy mayor. But it also says that they have to attend 26 meetings in a year. And they will be decided or counted on a bi-yearly basis, so in June and December. But it makes it very hard for the treasurer. So for example, the people who were elected now, how many meetings did they have to attend? Is it 2? Is it 4? Is it 6? It's not stated in the bylaw, so it's a little bit unclear. It also isn't stated as who's keeping the records. Is the treasurer going to call every counselor and say, which meetings did you attend? And I need a list. It's, I guess what I'm saying, or what I feel is that it's somewhat difficult bylaw to administer because of the way it's set up. I also did some work on just doing a spreadsheet on what everyone was paid. And there is a little minor discrepancy. If you break it down, the mayor's salary is 15,600 and the councilor's salary is 10,800. And if you break that down to weekly, it's like $207 or $300 weekly. But if you do the math and calculate it by the weeks, there's a slight variance in how it's being paid. So there might be some accounting irregularities here. I see that in my case, the mayor was paid for 1.96 months and the councilors were paid for 2.17 months. So obviously there's just a little bit of tweaking that needs to be done here with this whole bylaw. I think the idea of the bylaw is just too convoluted. Don, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, so at first I wanted to say that Leanne identified it and then you, I think that's important to say the treasurer identified the potential discrepancies. And keep in mind that Leanne just arrived on scene.
Right.
So there's some accounting. She cannot reconcile past or present council members and the amount of funds that were paid out for the year 2022. However, this report needs to go to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. And it needs council resolution to say that as we're going to resolve tonight, request a detailed report from the treasurer. She needs the motion to go to with municipal affairs that you've received it, not that you agree with it, but that you've received this report. And then the next motion to deal with giving her time to reconcile it, because she does feel strongly that it doesn't match the bylaw, the amount of funds that were paid out last year and this year, of which she had nothing to do with, but she's trying to reconcile and can't.
She only started doing payroll on January the 1st.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she didn't do the payroll for this period of
Right.
time for 2022.
So she has identified discrepancy and will need to go and do some investigation. I think it's not prudent for you to just accept it, but you need to give her the authority to go in and dig a little deeper to see who was overpaid, underpaid, whatever that discrepancy might be.
Sure. Any other discussion from anybody? Yeah, go ahead, Dean. Go ahead, Councilor Grant.
Always go first, but I think there's a discrepancy as well. I'm concerned about the issue for this reason. Try to summarize it with my two suggestions is this bylaw, this remediation, the pay bylaw was introduced in August. At the same time, the budget was being similar, the exact same time, essentially, the budget was being created
Right.
last year. They budgeted, the budget that I've received, they budgeted $37,000 for council expenses. So the actual expenses were $60,000 for last year. So I think that it calls into question, why would budget, you're 8 months in, so you already have an understanding of the costs for the year. You only have 4 months left. And you had a counselor that would vacated the seat, so that would reduce the costs. And it still went considerably over the budget that was created at the same time as the bylaw. So my point is that there's some inconsistencies, and I think that it's important that the treasurer and the CAO, the staff look into those inconsistencies. And I guess my two suggestions are that it could be, I would like to say, it also could just be an issue with the actual bylaw, which I messaged Leanne about, what's paid, what's not paid. There's, she brought to my attention, there's confusion around how to interpret the bylaw. it's not incredibly clear. So some of these inconsistencies could just be the interpretation of the bylaw, but the bylaw, it should be clear. So that my second suggestion is that the remediation bylaw is written in plain English and that it needs to be clarified. And my first suggestion is that we need to, that, you know, the treasurer is doing a good job at this, identifying areas where, you know, there's questions about, you know, where finance and when things aren't adding up. And we need to, you know, make a list of those areas and then likely we'll have to pursue them, which is what we're doing with the remediation. And, so, I mean, anyway, I just wanted to kind of highlight that inconsistency, the concern I have for that. And that unfortunately, I think that this bylaw was recently created. However, I do believe it needs to be clarified and adjusted so that it's a level playing field where one councilor is not, you know, claiming something that another councilor doesn't believe they can, just due to the confusion.
Right.
So, I have comments.
Any other comment? Oh, go ahead.
Other communities, pay by meeting, I believe, well, other communities that, when I'm on that, conservation authority, they often talk about they have to go to a meeting and they get so much money for every meeting.
Yes,
And this includes all those other committees that we're on too, boards.
actually, if you read the bylaw, the way it's written, it says that you have a base salary of $10,000 per year. And for that $10,000, you must attend 26 meetings in the year.
Right.
And then additional meetings that you attend would be paid at $150 per meeting. That's what-
Over and above.
over and above. That's what it says in the bylaw. Now, then it says that the meetings that you attend cannot be interest meetings, but they have to be meetings that are resolutions of council that you attend those meetings. But what Leanne is saying to me is who is keeping track of those meetings and who knows what meeting is and isn't
Exactly.
coverable. And here's the other rub. I mean, it's not a huge salary, but you're paid $10,000 and you miss 5 meetings. And we only have 22 meetings scheduled per year instead of 26. So if you're not on any boards, you only attend 22 meetings, you're already you're already $600 in deficit. And if you missed another 4 meetings, you'd be $1,200 in deficit. So now all of a sudden it's December and you're supposed to be paid $400, but you're $1,200 in deficit. Yeah, so where do you get the $1,200 from? So it's kind of,
How does that work at the end of a term? Do you send a bill?
yeah, it is.
You know,
So I mean, it sounds the other way. If we did it the other way, where you, at the end, say this meeting's the end of the month. For the last 4 weeks, I attended these meetings
Mhm.
and you put them in for approval and then you get paid for it.
I mean,
Well, but then you'd have to adjust the pay rate down. Because it includes, the pay rate that's there includes 26.
That's what I mean. You'd have to change that.
Yes, you'd have to change
And
that.
so instead of getting a per diem, a per annum, you'd get a per meeting.
Well, we'll have to,
we'll have to
Yeah.
discuss it, right?
yeah, that's a discussion for another meeting that we have to look at this bylaw and make it simpler to understand. Yes.
And the motion does deal with that. Leanne and her experience and now with the CEO do have enough experience to bring back to you a motion that
Well,
for a bylaw that will address this.
Yeah.
But to Bill's point, I think there's another matter that the current bylaw doesn't address is that when some of those committees do pay you,
right.
this bylaw doesn't address how do you then, the difference between the 150 and the 50, let's say, how do you reconcile that for the municipality? Then does the municipality owe you 100? Do you even, with this bylaw, it
It's not
doesn't say if you're getting 50, you don't get it 150 again. It just says you receive $150. So is it $50 bonus to you? This bylaw doesn't address that.
Right.
So Leanne, working with the new CEO, can bring back a recommendation for some
Okay.
bylaw wording.
Well, like police service board, they pay $100 a year
Right.
to go to 4 meetings.
And the positions recruitment is free. There is no.
But you
payment.
still go
But you still go. It's still a meeting. But then there are other boards that,
the
Yeah.
1 year going in.
Just to highlight one last point I find interesting is, you know, you're reconciling this on a 26 meeting thing, so you're dividing it out. So what happens when you had, for example, a counselor that resigned? Or, like you said, for the first few meetings of the year that we attended,
Right,
how do you determine
exactly.
whether you made your required amount of meetings?
So in other words, we're in agreement, I think.
Yeah,
Just
want to highlight.
Yeah, we're in agreement that the bylaw itself is flawed and needs to be revised. And are we all in agreement with that? Yes?
Yeah, and I like your plain language approach that you've brought up several times this meeting.
Yeah.
That's critical for everyone to understand what's going on.
Absolutely. Any other discussion from anyone?
One more point, I think
Sure.
it's super important, as the way you spoke earlier, that if you are attending, that it's not your personal interest and that you're then coming back. It
And
needs to be
reporting.
a resolution by council to appoint you to attend those meetings, whether they're ad hoc committee meetings, or outside of the municipality meetings, to make sure that you're, having a resolution to appoint you to attend those meetings. Therefore, you can never be accused of submitting an invoice for attending a meeting that you didn't have the authority to represent council.
Right.
Also,
And do training meetings play a role in that? That's another question.
Well, even working group meetings.
Well, and that'll all have to be defined.
we have to have you'll have to have like I don't think this is, as far as I know, this, maybe staff can clarify, we have amounts paid to councils, but we don't have attendance records of meetings.
So
Like, we don't have like a stub that says like, this is why this was paid at what time. Like, these are the things that are frustrating.
Especially for taxpayers.
Absolutely, that, need to be resolved, and I am confident we're going to resolve them. I just think it's important that taxpayers are aware as well that these are the things we have to deal with.
And if you recall, when I first came, without even knowing this was going to happen, I did send that survey out to you all asking what committees you sat on representing council, knowing that, council remuneration is typically tied to that. And I know that some of you said, why are you asking this question? Well, now I have the answers to where you actually sat, and we can ensure that there are resolutions for those.
All right, so if I can move on. We have this motion on the floor, moved by Councillor Morton, seconded by Councillor Latimer. Whereas the current treasurer for the Corporation of Municipality of Calvin reports potential errors in the actual amounts of funds paid to council members for the calendar year 2022 as per bylaw 2022-053, a bylaw to establish remuneration for council, committees of council and its local boards to provide for remuneration of expenses. Therefore, be it resolved that council requests a detailed report from the treasurer outlining all inconsistencies and her recommendations for remedying any errors if and where they are found to exist. All in favor?
Aye.
That is carried. So the third part of this motion is the actual expense and remuneration for the fiscal year 2022. I need a mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Morton. And seconded by
Okay, I'll second it.
Councillor Latimer. Any discussion on the remuneration and expense statement prepared by the treasurer? Councillor Grant.
Just to highlight that if there's inconsistencies, the list of these inconsistencies we've made available, and I'd like to thank Leanne for bringing forth, when she sees something that's an inconsistency doesn't mean wrongdoing, don't get me wrong, just a matter of figuring out what's going on. If we can't figure it out, then we may need to seek, additional help. So I just wanted to make sure that those inconsistencies are being highlighted. And I also just wanted to mention that I'm looking forward to, the budget talks and budget discussions, because it's confusing. And, I think that, with help from our new CAO and our treasurer as well, that maybe staff can help to explain some of these things, speak for myself. because it's not the same as it used to be. It's similar, but we need to get a good understanding of what's going on with the budget and the finances. So I'm just, I guess I'm just committing to whatever process that we lay out to really get into that. And unfortunately, I think this year will take, I guess, what I'm saying, I believe it'll take longer this year. Short-term pain, and then hopefully it'll be much smoother next year.
Hopefully. Any other discussion?
I have no discussion. I just think we're starting basically from zero, so looking forward. Get it on the right track.
Just to say that, you know, Rael and Leanne have spoken and we'll be meeting tomorrow. Because as you know, just reading the last meeting when we received the budget report and, you know, Leanne had not had a chance to submit it on time. Reading through it with my eyes, not having been here, recognized some inconsistencies that I thought. So for example, I know that the Mattawa doctor recruitment has been something that the municipalities of the region have contributed to for a number of years and didn't see that had been paid out. So I asked Leanne, as you know, I had a series of questions, you know, 18 questions. And Leanne, I said, check, you know, for Mattawa Hospital, check for Mattawa, you know, gave her the tips on how to check. And what we found was indeed it had been paid. And I said to her, I'm shocked that this wasn't paid because I know that the Mattawa Hospital would have come out to use, actually have a seat there. So she found that that had been incorrectly posted. So that's now been fixed. Similarly to, you know, the tax question where there was a credit charge, it should have been debit. And so Leanne looked at that, we found that that had been incorrectly posted, you know, corrections going to be made there. A number of agreements that we hold, so for example, with fire landfill, knowing those agreements were in place, but no one had ever billed them. So I'm working on, I had identified two just by looking at the reports that I recognized probably weren't billed if they weren't in there. And what we found is that indeed those services were not billed out in 2022. So I've pulled out all of the agreements that we can find to ensure that people were billed in 2022. What we're finding is they have not been, but we're not done locating all of the agreements yet. So as you've said, you know, I'm staying on for a little bit to help with the transition in Rael and some of these things that, you know, we have a treasurer, thankfully, who's very, she's, you know, she's really great at what she's been doing and she's still not done with year end because every time somebody like me looks at this, we find new things and she's been, you know, bringing things up to date from July until December and trying to get through the current year at the same time. So I did get responses to most of these questions today from Leanne, and we know that there are some issues identified in either things not being billed out or incorrectly posted.
Can they still be billed out, Tom?
Well, the agreements, some of them were signed and sent back. Some of them were not signed and sent back. However, I would suggest that those who did not pay, these were long-standing agreements and should have known in their own budget exercises that they have those services from the municipality for a decade and longer. Their budgeting processes should have told them that they didn't pay this. So,
I'd like to add in that we were likely providing those services as well, for those periods of time, so
Yeah.
they still should be billed.
Paying for insurance. You don't always need it until you, or use it until you need it.
So the idea is that they will get billed back and that they would get billed retro on the 2022 budget or 2022 fiscal year where they belong, because you don't want to be sending an
Right.
invoice dated January 1st, 2023, when actually it should have been income for 2022. So we're working through that also. That's been a direction provided to Leanne. Bill them for the year 2022 where it belonged. And let's see what happens with that. And we have board membership or at least regional membership with somebody sits on these boards that have been, these organizations that have been billed and not paid. So if, you know, if we're not getting these agreements back signed again for this year, we need to push with the representatives who sit at that table to have them signed and to have the bills paid and to bring these things forward. So.
Excellent. Any last comments? No? All right. So again, that this is resolution 2023-098. Council hereby receives the 2022 council remuneration expense statement prepared by the treasurer. All those in favor?
Aye.
So it's carried. The next item is a report by the landfill. And of course, it's just a written report. Can I get a mover and a seconder for this report, please? Somebody, Councilor Morton, and seconded by Councilor Mason. Are there any discussion on the report provided by the landfill operator?
I've talked to him in the past and these are issues that he's identified. To me, just when I was dumping my garbage. And he mentioned recently about the student that he has leaving very shortly. I guess all I said to him was, well, I guess we'll get a new CAO be taking care of that.
If I may, Donna has told me that we can apply for one student
Yeah, so while
under
the,
program now.
yeah, while the federal summer student program was lost, I mean, no one, that application never went in for your typical recreation landfill. No one filled those out this year, so you've lost that. There's an opportunity for a smaller grant, and Rael and I have talked about that. I want to say before we get into this, that Mars was so happy when I asked, can you submit a report to council? Because no one's ever asked him to do that before, and I know it's not been his role to do that, but it gave him an opportunity to tell you what's happening at the landfill. And I think that's super important. So Rael and I've talked about, you know, the need for giving Mars the attention he deserves out there by himself, manning the landfill right now. And, you know, a number of issues have been identified in this report, and I knew of them because Mars and I have had communication. But to request this of him, and landfill now has its own email address also that's helpful to Mars or whoever might be there. And Rael and I sat down with Mars yesterday, and Mars knows that these things will be dealt with in the very near future, at least having a chat with the CEO, so.
Oh, we lost Mr. Latimer.
I'm back.
Oh,
I can
you're
see
back.
you. I can see you and hear you. I don't know, it just dropped out. But I'm back.
Well, while we're just fixing a technical difficulty, the landfill is an important thing in the township, and I know Councillor Grant has talked to me a couple of times about, you know, that's something that we've got to spend a little bit of attention on going forward. So it's great that Mars is providing us with a report. Is Robert with us?
He just has his camera.
Robert, are you with us?
Yeah, video is on. I can see you folks.
Sure, go ahead. Councillor Grant.
I just wanted to thank Mars for submitting the report. I think it's a good start, and I'm hoping to, you know, moving forward, maybe start a committee and get some members of the public as well, possibly on that committee, just to. I think there's simple things that can be done at the landfill and some maybe more complicated things that we could plan for if grants became available, and to make some improvements there around diversion and you know, and investing in that site, things like, you know, sand for, so you don't slip, and gloves, and, you know, basic PPE and things, I think are, you know, we're making investments, right, in the staff and in the site, and let's, you know, let's keep doing that with us.
Any other comments? He's back.
Well,
Anything?
maybe just the long-term future of the landfill and how it's managed. You know, it's it has a lifespan, and I'm sure there improvements could be made to how we deal with the waste and the recycling, etc. So definitely needs some attention.
Agreed completely. And if I'm not mistaken, when that life has expired, there's some big expenses for the township, big expenses for the township. So whatever we can do to alleviate the shorter term of the landfill is going to benefit the residents of the township. Huge. All right, so could I call this to a vote? It's now therefore be it resolved that council for the corporation of the municipality of Calvin received the landfill attendance report as submitted. All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. So, we have, I guess mine are numbered differently. Oh, no, this is the second part of the landfill.
Right.
Yes. I apologize. So this is, just, that some, expenditures have to be made, for staffing and sand bin needs. This is resolution 2023-102. May I have a mover and a seconder for this motion, please?
A second.
Horton and Latimer. So this is just talking about the need for consistent assistance at the landfill and a sand bin to prevent slips and falls during freezing weather conditions. Any discussion on this motion? No? No? No discussion?
Nope.
Was in the report submitted by the landfill. And yeah, it's just a safety concern that should be addressed. So I'll read the resolution. It is whereas the landfill attendant reports a need for consistent assistance at the landfill, and whereas the landfill attendant reports the need for a sand bin to prevent slips and falls during freezing weather conditions. Now therefore be it resolved that the council of the corporation of the municipality of Calvin directs the CAO to meet with the landfill attendant to discuss and plan for meeting the landfill staffing needs and purchase the sand bin. All those in favor?
Aye.
Carried. So the next item on the agenda was proposed by Councillor Latimer. It's improvements to the mechanism for Calvin residents when filing complaints relating to the Code of Conduct or Municipal Act. Mover and a seconder,
I'll move it.
right? Councillor Latimer, and seconded by Councillor Grant. So this is also going to be two parts. The first is discussing how we do this, and the second is setting up a committee if everyone agrees. So Councillor Latimer, as this is your motion, I'll move it to you to open the discussion.
Okay, well, I've looked at documents from about 10 different municipalities who have already recognized the gaps in the legislation, and they put steps in place to deal with complaints before they reach the integrity commissioner. So as a taxpayer, and I'm assuming all taxpayers, we like to see these things issues resolved before they reach the integrity commissioner, at whose rates would be between $300 to $500 per hour. Resolution at that level could reach $10,000 per filing, and that should be a last resort. There's a number of steps that we can put in place to resolve issues, to hear them, to validate them, and as a final resort, they can go to the integrity commissioner. It's the right of every Ontario citizen to do that. I believe that the residents of Calvin would rather see their tax dollars going to other things, and if possible, resolve complaints early. And so I'm putting forward the motion to strike a working group to look at different options to deal with issues before they reach the final integrity commissioner, get into the integrity commissioner's hands.
Excellent. Does anyone have any comments or discussion? Councillor Grant.
I'm definitely interested in this working group, and that it's fully within the authority of the council to create a code of conduct that meets the needs of our residents, provided that we follow the regulation that's laid out in the Municipal Act. which is quite general speaking. So there are many details that we can determine as a council, for what's in the best interest of the ratepayers. And I'll highlight one example of something that I think is something that would be ideal to prevent, if at all possible, is the idea of you could have a non-ratepayer potentially launch complaint after complaint after complaint with zero cost to that person, and then expect the ratepayers to actually then pay those bills. The system has gotten a little bit crazy because it's not, it used to be about, it's supposed to be about, stopping bad behavior. But it's increasingly, not just in Calvin, it's increasingly across the province being used as a political weapon to punish councillors that someone might disagree with. And I hope that we can have policy debates and debate policy. And then, if there's wrongdoing, there's wrongdoing. Like, I believe the process should exist, but the process shouldn't exist just for the sake of punishing a councillor. And I wanted to make, so like a new system, a reform system should be fair and reasonable system. And also, I think one other aspect that has happened across the province is the process has become very financially lucrative for some ICs, where they're making considerable amounts of money based on these investigations. And all they're simply doing is enforcing the code of conducts. So that's why it's so important that our code of conduct, it should demonetize the investigation process. So as that ICs are interested in the conduct and interested in the actual content, and they're not incentivized through financial things. So there's a whole bunch of things there, but I've done a considerable amount of research. I have some information that I actually had already emailed for information purposes to the rest of the council. So hopefully we can get all that to this working group, and we can protect ratepayers from out of control costs and spend that money on something like infrastructure. Anyway, there's what I'd like to say about that.
Thank you very much. Any other comments?
When we were on the committee before, we were in a rush to do the code of conduct, so we basically adopted a code of conduct, and we didn't overlook, we just omitted the discussion around fees. So looking through the items that are on this list, I really like number 7, where they have a residence requirement. Because I was interviewing a township regarding a candidate. They were talking about the thousands of dollars they spent because there was a complaint, and they kept sending briefs to the integrity commissioner. And when they weren't satisfied, they'd send another brief, several hundred pages. And that's $300 an hour. He had to read all that. And then if they weren't happy, they'd send another 1,000 pages. So it was costing them, I believe it was over 10,000, if not up to 15, just for that one complaint that turned out to be frivolous and vexatious.
Okay,
But the working group has to be 2, or you're gonna have to have a taking minutes.
well, we can take
Yeah.
minutes or 2 minutes. We can take minutes.
And just,
I'd like to just echo what Bill said, I have a strong interest in these codes of conduct, and then me and Bill had recommended a simple code of conduct, because there's also threats and complaints from the ombudsman that we didn't have a code of conduct. So we wanted to move forward, but it needs to be revised, because I think that system unfortunately, it's available for abuse. And it also has the effect of watering down actual legitimate complaints are less significant because of a lot of more minor complaints. So I think what I'm suggesting is that this process needs to be focused on very serious offenses. Accidentally gifting a cup of coffee is not the same offense as someone getting $100,000 building lot for, as a favor. These are 2 very, very different things. So Hey, I'm excited to talk more about it.
My 2 cents worth, my comments, I've read the section of the municipal act that defines the code of conduct and the purpose of an integrity commissioner. And in the municipal act, it states that it has to, one, deal with conflict of interest violations. So as you were saying, Councillor Grant, the kind of thing that was happening was somebody would be on a zoning committee and vote to rezone a piece of property from residential to commercial, and then they would get a kickback of $25,000 because a developer wanted that property rezoned and they wanted to make sure it happened. Those kind of violations have to be addressed in the code of conduct and and it's clearly stated in the municipal act. It also states that there has to be an air of decorum amongst council. And I'm sure that the initial intent of the legislation was to stop. Yeah, and I've seen it in Calvin, but it's happened all across the province. Many, many years ago, there were people that would grab people on the desk and threaten to punch them in the face if they didn't do what they wanted. And that's just not going to produce good council decisions. You need to have decorum within the council. And those are the two main things that are stressed. And decorum is one thing, but you have to define what is decorum, but what is foul and offensive language? We have lots of laws in the country that deal with things like slander and defamation. And that's sort of what the code of conduct is meant to be. And then the MCIA stuff, the municipal conflict of interest violations, just to stop bad things from happening. That's what we have to maybe focus on, those two aspects of the code of conduct. I'm all in favor of Mr. Latimer's motion here to put together a group to discuss what should be done and what we can do moving forward. And I think that's, very positive. The second part is deciding who would be on that board, but this is just a resolution to agree to move forward with creating this committee. So this is moved by Councillor Latimer, seconded by Councillor Grant. I'll bring it to a vote. The Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Calvin should consider improvements to the mechanism for residents when filing complaints related to violations of the Code of Conduct or the Municipal Act. Be it therefore now resolved that a working group composed of a minimum of 2 or 3 members of council and the clerk CAO be struck, and to meet and consider options for such improvements, and that this working group report back to council on May the 23rd at the regular meeting of council with recommended options for discussion and a decision by council on a path forward. All in favor?
All right.
Great. So the second part here is the working group composition for improvements. So this is, we just have to have a quick discussion about who would be on this group, but I need someone to move this and second it. I'm gonna look to Mr. Latimer to move this.
I'll move it.
Seconded by Councillor Manson. So this is open for discussion. Is there anybody who would like to be on this committee? What? No one wants to be on the committee?
Well, I'll be on the committee. I've looked at, like I said, I've looked at some of the other municipalities, what they've put in place, and there's a lot of interesting ideas and work has already been done. So I'm definitely interested in seeing this move forward. I would like to be on the committee or the working group.
Councillor Manson as well?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what's being said here tonight around this. I think the notion of a complaint process simplified if someone has a complaint, maybe they aren't aware that you don't have to go to the ombudsman's office. You don't have to go to the IC. You can go to, maybe we have a process that just says, hey, I have an issue with this and I would like to see it addressed before you know, if I have a house fly, I'm grabbing a fly swatter first, not a sledgehammer.
Right.
So a lot of these issues still need the sledgehammer treatment seems to be perhaps the default.
And that is something that would be discussed in this group and then with recommendations brought forward. So I'm just looking for a list of those people who'd like to. Counselor,
I would like to participate, yes.
Counselor Grant. So, and of course, the CEO, you're,
Sorry about that. I did a whole bunch of motions tonight that put them on jobs.
you're already on this committee.
By default, it's all good.
Well, I suggested the CAO because of the legality of the meeting. When the ombudsman's rep phoned me, well, who took minutes? Was the clerk present? Blah, blah, blah. So I don't know if it's necessary or not. I'm not familiar with that, but I definitely want to make sure I don't have any more calls from the ombudsman asking.
Alright.
We
Yeah,
take
so-
minutes and
You have to have.
Yes,
it.
yeah. I also wouldn't mind being on the committee, but I can bend to the other three as being there. That's fine.
I'm on enough committees now.
All right. So then we're looking at Councillor Latimer, Councillor Manson, and Councillor Grant on this committee with the CAO Real Forget.
Should they
Any other discussion on this?
have the current integrity commissioner on that too?
No, this is just from council.
And that being said, a committee, so we'll come back to council as well, so everyone will have input.
Right.
so
Alright.
Mayor Richard, I limited it to 2 or 3, but
No, I think that's good. I think,
we can,
Three
no,
is
the
a good-
mayor, add the mayors as well or not?
oh, I think 3 is a good working,
I feel like once you get over 3, you might as well just do it as.
Oh, yeah, you must.
yeah, you might as well just do it in council.
Which could.
Okay,
All right, so whereas the council of the corporation of the municipality of Calvin has delegated the task of recommending improvements to the mechanism for residents when filing complaints related to the code of conduct and or the municipal act to a working group. Now therefore be it resolved that the following persons serve on that working group: Councillor Latimer, Councillor Manson, Councillor Grant, and CAO Real Forget. All in favor? That is carried. Good luck with your committee meetings.
Maybe not a working group.
It's a working group. It's a working group. It is a working.
It's 3 of them. So it's a committee.
No.
No,
No.
It's all leaders.
What, sorry?
Oh, I thought you meant 3 committees.
no, it's, no, yeah. No, I'm saying that if there's 3 of them, it's not a committee then.
Is it?
Yeah, it should be.
If there's only
Okay.
2 of them, then it's a working group.
All right, so it is a committee.
I know it's semantics, but being that we're being judged on everything, it better be right.
Try to get everything right. Get everything right. The next item on the agenda is 8.14, which is the Town of Cobourg resolution for the municipalities retaining surplus proceeds from tax sales. Could I have a mover and a seconder for this, please? Councillor Grant moves,
Second.
and Councillor Morton second. So this was in your package. This was something that came forward from the consent agenda, which we will later call information letters. It's just supporting the motion of the Council Corporation of Plymouth, Wyoming, who was bringing forth the idea that the surplus proceeds from tax sale should come back to the township rather than go back to the provincial government. Is there any discussion on this motion?
I just wanted to throw in one piece of perspective,
Mhm.
that currently if there's a tax sale, we would receive the arrears, the money owing, and then the remainder of the money would go to the province.
Right.
So under the current system, the incentive for the municipality is to collect only the money owed.
Mhm.
It's not to, to pursue a property, really. The incentive is for money owed. So if the system changes, though, it may change the incentive structure slightly. And I guess there's a process to follow, but a municipality might follow that process faster in order to acquire more revenue.
And of course, there are costs involved in the municipality of doing these tax sales, and just recouping the tax revenue doesn't really cover those costs.
Just, yeah, and I agree, and so there's pros and cons to both methods, and whether, the municipality should have more of a financial incentive, aside from just arrears. It's an interesting, it changes things a little bit, that's all I was suggesting. Which I find interesting.
Any other comments? Discussion?
I'm in favor.
All right. Whereas at the regular council meeting held on April the 25th, 2023, the council for the Corporation and Municipality of Calvin considered correspondence from the town of Cobourg and the town of Essex and the town of Plymouth, Wyoming, regarding municipalities retaining surplus proceeds from tax sales. Now therefore be it resolved that the council directs staff to send a letter of this resolution and all relevant taxation bodies, including the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, urging them to reinstate a previous legislation that permitted a municipality to apply for and retain the surplus proceeds from a tax sale in the jurisdiction, and that a copy of the resolution be circulated to all other municipalities in Ontario, urging them to support it. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. The next item on the agenda is very short. There is a meeting tomorrow about the Lake Talon Public Dock. And I just need a mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Morton. A seconder,
I'll second.
Councillor Latimer. Nothing has been resolved at this point in time. This is just simply information gathering at this time, but is there any discussion on this motion?
If I might.
Sure.
So I have some experience with this committee from a few years back, and the CEO in Bonfield being new, when I sat on the same issue identified about 7 years ago now. I am aware that there are minutes taken because I took the minutes of that committee quite some time ago. So you should be prepared tomorrow, if they can locate those minutes in another municipality, for some information that likely won't come to the table by those attending. So I'm hoping that you're very well prepared for that. The CEO from the other township is now aware of a little bit of history of that item.
All right. Any other discussion? Any questions that anyone has about this? I've spoken to Councillor Latimer. He's looked at this particular dock and it is in poor repair, but it's questionable the amount of benefit it would provide to the township of Calvin. It's primarily something that's going to benefit the township of Bonfield. But we don't know what we're at this point in time.
I like to just add to that, if we own it, the township, the Calvin Township owns it, I would say it's a very poor reflection on our status. This is really, it either should be removed or replaced, because it serves a lot of people, and not just the residents of Bonfield. There's a lot of tourists that go through there. I would say that it reflects on us if it's known that it's owned and maintained by our municipality. Make a statement. I don't agree with doesn't benefit Calvin residents. A number of people fish there, travel there, may have cottages on the lake. You know, that's my opinion on it.
One thing that I did do a tiny bit of research on is where the dock is actually located is at the border of Bonfield and Calvin Township. And the portion of Calvin Township that it's in is the Mattawa North Bay River Park. So the Mattawa Provincial Park. So apparently at one point in time, there was an agreement between the Residents Association and the Mattawa River Park to maintain this dock. So we'll have to see what comes up in this discussion tomorrow. And of course, you know, what kind of costs are involved. And that I would bring back to council for your approval or not approval as the. Good, Councillor.
Just ownership, I think, is critical, and the last I was told is that it's not Calvin's property, but it seems to change almost on an annual basis, so gathered lots of good information and.
We'll gather the information.
One more thing, Mayor Richard, I mentioned an article that I read about funding for the township of Bonfield, that they had funding for their waterfront and et cetera. And at the end of the news article, it mentioned that there were funds available for that particular piece of infrastructure.
Really?
Yes. So they had a grant. Fidelli handed out some money. Bonfield made good use of it, but part of it was directed towards the dock, the public launch at Town Lake.
All right. Well, these are all questions that will have to be addressed tomorrow.
If I might, I
Sure.
believe that the funding for the dock was on Lake Nosbonsing adjacent to the park.
No, it was Talon Lake. I read it. I was very interested in it. But I could be wrong, but I have been wrong before once. But
You could,
Long meeting, I can tell you that.
if you can send me a copy of that by email. So
I
I'll have-
can't. I won't. It was probably a year ago. Randy
Oh, okay.
McLaren was the mayor, and we're reading it somewhere.
All right. Well, I'll ask both the questions and I'll report back to council. So if there's no further discussion, if I may bring us to a vote, the Township of Bonfield's mayor has called a meeting on Wednesday, April the 26th, 2023 of the Lake Talon cottage owners and council representation from the Corporation of Municipality of Calvin, among others, to discuss the Lake Talon public dock repair needs. Now therefore be it resolved that Mayor Gould be appointed to represent council at this and future meetings held for this purpose. All in favor?
All right.
It's carried.
Meetings.
Yes. You can go instead if you'd
No,
like.
thanks. I'm going to a meeting tomorrow. Good.
All right, so the next item on the agenda is item 816, which is an unsolicited offer to purchase. And this is just up the road from the dock. It's a very, very short distance up. It's 142 Talon Lake Road. I need a mover and a seconder for this motion, please. John Hanson is moved and seconded by
Second.
Councillor Latimer. This was been in your agenda package, and it is a private property that is currently owned by Calvin Township. And is there any discussion on this issue?
Should we even entertain it with an unidentified?
Well, the motion is not to accept the unsolicited offer. The motion is
To declare it surplus.
to possibly declare it surplus and to discuss that. Yes.
I support the motion. I'd just like to highlight that neither the purchase offer or the identifiable information of the purchaser has been disclosed to council.
Right.
So it's a fair process.
Did they have to go through the planning board for this or?
No, this is just a. So essentially, if, just to give some clarification, council owns this property. It was, seized by tax. The house had burnt, the property was, taken over by the township at our expense. Apparently, we, removed the house from the property, or the burnt down remains of the house. And, this property is in the township's possession. It's a building lot, approximately 1 acre, I believe. And it does have a well, and it does have a septic there, because there was a house there at one point in time. So someone could use this as a building lot. In order for this property to go up for sale, the first thing that would have to happen is the township would have to declare this as surplus. And we could then just send out a tender, or we could decide that we don't want to release the property for sale. And that's where we are at this point in time. All of the information on this lot was in the package. And so this resolution would be, we're not voting on it just yet, but would be recommending how to proceed, and that we're recommending to declare the property surplus, or recommend that the property sale price or minimum tender is released to the public. So was there any discussion on this process?
If I might, there should be a sale of land bylaw that you can refer back to. How old that bylaw and the sale of land is, we need to be reviewed at the same time to see if you're in order. And so the suggestion here, the recommendation is to give time so that that sale of land bylaw can be reviewed, so that you know what the process ought to be.
Okay,
And typically, that sale of land bylaw would tell you whether or not you can or should not entertain an unsolicited bid. And I would suggest that likely that's not how it would be, that you would have to declare it surplus. So the recommendation to then go back to look at that sale of land bylaw and to determine the price. So you've not seen that, I've not showed that to you. And if this motion is passed tomorrow, I will let the purchaser, the potential purchaser, know what the weight that they're going to hear back in due time, but what the next process might be.
I have a question. It says a recommended, the last line, it says a recommended property sale price or minimum tender bid.
Mhm.
Why minimum? Like, that doesn't, is that
Yeah,
is
no, minimum.
legislated?
Also, it would be starting, because if you just put a tender out to say offer, and that you might say,
Oh, I see. Oh, okay, got it.
might want to say, we're not going to entertain bids less than.
Right, okay.
Or should we change that to not less than, or,
well, no, it's
No, no,
what it says here. It's a minimum,
Yeah.
I don't know, but I mean, to make it clear, as everybody keeps talking about transparency, make it
Minimum tender.
plain language.
Minimum tender,
So
minimum price.
no discussion, then I'll call this to a vote. The clerk has advised council that an unsolicited offer to purchase PCL 26648 section Nipissing Part Lot 36 Concession 11 Calvin and Part 2 36 R 3901 Municipal Address 142 Talon Lake Road, property owned by the municipality, has been received. And whereas the council has received as part of its agenda package information related to this property for review, and whereas neither the purchase offer amount or identifiable information of the purchaser and or his agent has been disclosed to council. Now hereby be it resolved that the council for the corporation of the municipality of Calvin direct the CAO to bring back to council on the June 13th meeting a recommendation for how to proceed, and that that recommendation will be to declare the property surplus to the municipal needs, recommended property sale price or minimum tender bid. All those in favor of this resolution?
All right,
Carried. So next resolution is 8.17. This is an old thing from the East Nipissing Planning Board. Essentially, just talking about a road allowance that the township has been using that is actually a part of another lot that had been severed and it hadn't been originally caught. This is now being sold to the municipality for the price of $1, and all the costs of the transfer are being covered by the owner of the property and not by the municipality. So I need a mover and a seconder for this Bell property transaction. Councillor Morton, it's seconded by
I'll second.
Vladimir. Any discussion on this property? Is everyone clear on what the transfer is?
Sounds to me like the same thing as we did on Donald's Road.
Yes, very, very similar. Any other discussion, questions? Whereas council has received legal documentation and correspondence from the East Nipissing Planning Board regarding the transfer of land, and whereas the said land is described as part of broken lot 24 concession 2, being part 1 on parcel 36R14991, District of Nipissing. Now therefore be it resolved that the council of the corporation of the municipality of Calvin hereby approve this transaction at the advice of the East Nipissing Planning Board, which includes that all costs to complete the transfer of the land to the municipality incurred as a result of this transaction completed will be borne by the sellers of the property. And the council directs the CAO clerk to forward all documents pertinent to this transfer to be completed by the municipality's lawyer and between the seller's lawyer. And that no further dealings once this resolution is passed will be handled by the CAO clerk. All those in favor?
All right,
And we move on to, geez, this one isn't really important, is it? Next one,
818.
819.
What happened?
Oh, yes, 818 first, the round table. This I'm not familiar with,
Yeah, when we spoke, we just thought to introduce it because we've suspended the procedural bylaw as a new way to see if council is interested in case there's something else that may not be mentioned on the agenda that you might want to bring up as information to share with each other and with the general public. So for example, Bill, Councillor Morton, we haven't talked about the fire activities happening this weekend. So not that there's going to be fires without you're holding a breakfast. So it's a good chance to bring it up again because it's not on the agenda. So if we did a round table, and I've seen other municipalities do this as an order of business. Oh, I forgot to tell you about, it's not on the agenda. It's nothing that requires a decision, but it's just good information for you all to be aware of or for the general public to be aware of.
We have a system where they have to have it. Oh, to be on the agenda, it has to be in by Friday at noon, right?
Right, so this is just information, not anything that you're deciding on.
So you want me to start then?
why don't you start, Bill?
Right, Saturday from 9 to 12, we've obtained this facility to have a firefighter pancake breakfast, pancake and sausages. And there's also going to be some baking goods by the wives and plants, tomatoes and cucumbers, and I forget what else she's making. And all the proceeds go to the Calvin Fire Department. And I posted that we didn't send it out this year. We used to send it out as a individual mailing to each resident, but it costs about $65, which ends up being about a third of what we collect. So I stopped.
And I understand that you are the safe food inspector.
Oh, yeah, myself, my wife, Les Wally, and tonight, 3 more guys are taking the course because we have to have somebody so we can rent the And it's been brought to our attention that the health department requires a safe food handling certified person. And the two that the township used to have won't be coming. So we scrambled around to get the course, and the township's gonna reimburse us the $29, which is great, because everywhere else we looked, it was 130. So that wherever the,
And what is happening with the breakfast? Is it by donation? Is there a fee?
oh, they're posting $7. We had a big debate about that, but the $7 per person. And most people just throw in 10 anyway,
Okay.
or, you know, whatever. And we've, in the 3 years ago, they had it was $6 a person. And, so we gotta have a price on there, or some people just come and eat and walk away. And it's the price, I don't know what the price for the baking and the plants are gonna be, but, that'll be up to the Women's Association and the botanist, I guess.
So Bill, it's at the hall, and what are the times again?
9 in the morning till noon.
9 till noon?
We'll have tea and coffee and orange juice for the kids. We usually get, I don't know, somewhere up to 60 or 70 people, but it'll be interesting to see after the pandemic, how many people actually come out, and it'll be good. Hopefully the brand new council will be there, and good time to show your face to the township, because there's people we never see, and there's a lot of them, as I keep saying, we keep doing this electronic information exchange, and there's a lot of people in the township that don't do it. So they don't use the internet, or they don't use, they don't come to these meetings. As you can tell, we only have 6 people here tonight. Some of them will be listening to that tomorrow morning on their way to work, and if we go to just regular meetings without that, there'll be a lot of people upset, because they're gonna say that, well, that's their only way of knowing what's going here.
So spread word of mouth.
Yeah, it's all word of mouth, yeah. You know, the bottom line of it all is that the fire department's always looking for men and women that are willing to come out and be available to fight emergency situations in the community.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else, roundtable?
I have no information.
Oh,
I have no information, but I don't know if this is appropriate to bring up at this point. I guess we'll see. But council meetings can be kind of maybe a bit dry.
mm-hmm.
They can also be maybe a bit intimidating. If you're gonna speak and you're gonna do delegation, you know, it can also be an intimidating place. So I wonder if there's ways that we can make the meetings a little more friendly, a little more upbeat, maybe a little more fun, a little less stiff, a little less, there's a formality to it that's necessary, but a little lighter.
Right.
So I don't know if that needs a working group or something to have a little chat about, or if it's
Well,
worth pursuing.
that's a really good thing to bring up, because Rial has talked about the idea of doing some community meetings in the summertime. We have some things that we want to accomplish long-term, and we've talked about that in our training meeting. And Rial, maybe I'll even ask you, put you on the spot. You were talking about doing some community forum meetings in the summertime to go over some of these ideas, and they would be a more relaxed format, correct?
Yeah, certainly. So all kinds of ideas that can happen. Probably too many to discuss here tonight, but you know, one that comes to mind, and it's just primarily because I'm new here, and it would be just to have a bit of a meet and greet. That could be encompassing of council and the CAO, and just meeting with the public. Certainly, that would be something that I'm sure some members of the public would appreciate. And then also, but slightly a little bit more formal, but through identification of other things that need to be done, whether that be short-term projects or long-term projects, would be to have some some kind of visioning sessions, less formal, but not as formal as a council meeting, to start identifying what needs to be done in terms of the asset management side of things, the level of service that's expected or desired from the public on whatever assets or whatever service you provide. And that also helps build that relationship going forward with the public and with council. So there's a lot of ideas that we can undertake, a lot of possibilities, and I think as we get more comfortable in the roles, we can certainly explore that and see what can happen, whether that be through working groups and or a special committee, whatever it may be. I think there is opportunity there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
In view of what Donna said, I forgot, the next meeting is not till May the 9th, and we have another event in between, the garbage pickup for the township on Saturday, May the 6th.
May the 6th, that's right.
And a couple of the guys from the fire department, because we have to have a group sponsor it, I got to grab a couple of guys from the fire department to put our name in, and then we're just gonna do like they did last year, do garbage pickup on the streets and then come back here for barbecue.
We will all be participating that day as well.
Well, last year it was great. We met 5 brand new families of the community, including John.
And you know,
It might
this,
not have been brand new, but
and these kind of events are the less intimidating, more welcoming kind of events that we can focus on to kind of bring people together, which is, you know, super positive. So thank you for that, those comments as well. And anybody else?
I'd just like to add that I'm happy to see this agenda item. We used to call it old and new business, and it's nice because is so much time between meetings, and even after the agenda is created, certain things arise, and it's nice to be able to have an open, you know, transparent discussion here, and whatever issues, you know, maybe whatever information we might want to share. So I think it should stay for now at least, or, you know, I think it's a good idea, and we'll see how it goes.
Great, thank you.
we want to know about police service support.
No, that should be on your, as a report, yeah. So I want to bring to everyone's attention, there's a great opportunity for funding coming up, and I have to be very careful about speaking too loudly about this one because I actually sit on the provincial board of directors for the Ontario Trillium Foundation. So I'm providing information that's available to anyone on the website. Very rare is a capital grant opportunity available through the Ontario Trillium Foundation. So any not-for-profit organization or municipalities under the 15,000 may apply to this capital grant, up to 150,000 for renovations or new builds of recreation, sport, arts, and culture projects. That application deadline is approaching. It's a very, it's quite a simple application. They will fund up to 100%, though your score that you might get won't be as high if you don't contribute any money. But if there are not-for-profit organizations and the municipalities start thinking about things, the deadline is in July, I believe. They just announced it this week. So you might want to put your thinking caps out there, and if there are any not-for-profits listening, that application deadline is, and the information available at otf.ca.
Thank you. All right, so we're done with the open session, and we will move on to bylaw 8. Well, item 819 on the agenda, which is a bylaw to appoint the CAO for treasurer. Is there a motion for the bylaw, or are we just going right to the bylaw?
Right for the bylaw. Yeah, sorry, I think there was a motion.
All right. So this is a bylaw to appoint a CAO clerk treasurer, and I guess everybody knows who that is. Riel Forget is in the room here with us. So whereas under the provisions of section 228 and section 229 of the Municipal Act of 2001, C25 is amended, A municipality shall appoint a clerk and a chief administrative officer respectively, who shall have all the powers and duties of said offices under the Municipal Act and every other act. And whereas under the provisions of section 226 of the Municipal Act, RSO 2001 C25 is amended, a municipality shall appoint a treasurer and a tax collector who is responsible for handling all the financial affairs of the municipality on behalf and in the manner directed by the council of the municipality. And whereas the municipal council of the corporation of the municipality of Calvin deems it expedient to combine the said offices of CAO clerk treasurer and to appoint CAO clerk treasurer to the municipality of Calvin. Now therefore, the council of the corporation of the municipality of Calvin enacts as follows: that Rial Forget is hereby appointed to the office of CAO clerk treasurer, and two, pursuant to section 288, subparagraphs 4 and 5 of the Municipal Act 2001, Chapter 25, the clerk may delegate in writing to any person other than a member of council any of the clerk's powers and duties under this or any other act, and that despite of this delegation may continue to exercise the delegated power and duties. That all other bylaws inconsistent with this bylaw are hereby repealed. This bylaw shall come into force upon its and take effect upon final passing thereof, read first time, second time, and third time, and finally passed this 25th day of April 2023. And we don't have to vote. That's just the bylaw. Yes.
I'm gonna defer to Rael because he prepared it.
I thought we do.
Well, you would normally have a first and second reading,
Okay.
okay, which you,
Done.
and then you'd have a third and final reading. So you
So
technically have to read it again.
I technically have to read it again.
Sure.
My last meeting, court thing maybe. Whereas under the provisions of section 228 and 229 of the Municipal Act, RSO 2001 C25, as amended, a municipality shall appoint a clerk and a chief administrative officer, respectively, who shall have all the powers and duties of said offices until the Municipal Act and every other act under the Municipal Act and every other act. And whereas under the provisions of section 286 of the Municipal Act, RSO 2001 C25 is amended, a municipality shall appoint a treasurer and tax collector who is responsible for handling all the financial matters of the municipality on behalf of and in the manner directed by council of the municipality. And whereas the municipal council of the corporation of the municipality of Calvin deems it expedient to combine the said offices of CEO clerk and treasurer and to appoint a CEO clerk treasurer to the municipality of Calvin. Now therefore, the council for the corporation of the municipality of Calvin enacts as follows: that Rael Forget is hereby appointed to the office of CEO clerk treasurer pursuant to section 288(4)(5) of the Municipal Act 2001, Chapter 25. The clerk may delegate in writing to any person other than a member of council any of the clerk's powers and duties under this or any other act, and that despite of this delegation may continue to exercise the delegated powers and duties. That all other bylaws inconsistent with this bylaw are hereby repealed. This bylaw shall become into force and take effect upon passing thereof. Read for a second time.
There's a vote. Is there a vote?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. Bylaw is passed. Congratulations, Riel.
Thank you.
I'm sure I speak for everyone here in saying that we look forward to a very promising future.
In here.
So we will now go on to item 9, which is moving into an in-camera session. I need a mover and seconder for that, please.
I'll move.
Councillor Grant. Councillor Morrison. Now therefore be it resolved that the council proceeds into an in-camera session at 8:40 p.m. to discuss confidential human resource matters pursuant to section 239 and to deal with a personal matter about an identifiable individual, including municipal employees, and pursuant to section 219 sub 2B, advice that this subject, that advice that is subject to solicitor client privilege, including communication necessary for that purpose. So all in favor? It's carried. So thank you all for your attendance tonight. And
I'd just like to say something. I
oh,
was
hang on.
so proud for you to be able to not move into closed session, because the agenda, when I was reading it, we had no reason to move into closed session, and then some things happened that are legal in nature, and that we had to have this closed session. So apologies to everyone out there, but the legal nature of this matter forces us to have to go into closed session.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for attending.
Can I say something that's not controversial?
Sure.
Thank you so much, Donna, for stepping up and helping us. And welcome, Rael.
Thank you.
I feel very positive. Don't lose track of this gal. We've got connection. Okay?
Absolutely not.
Okay, and thank you all.
Thank you, Wayne.
You don't have to be formal. I mean, you're doing the job. We're all human. Get the job done, but I like your ideas, okay?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Trying to be perfect.
I wanted to say that when we're talking.
Still on the recording.
Yeah, she's shutting down the recording now.